Hello, everyone. Can I get a quick show of hands? How many of you or your companies are running commercial Linux workloads? So Red Hat Enterprise Linux, SUSE Linux, Ubuntu Pro. All right, all of you, great. So as a license administrator or a software asset manager, you are procuring and managing and tracking your licenses, or in case of commercial Linux, your OS subscriptions. As a IT administrator, you are keeping your system secure and up to date. And as part of that, sometimes it may require you to purchase additional extended support subscriptions. And as a developer, you just want to be able to deploy and scale your applications in a seamless manner. And all of you want to be doing all of these jobs in a secure and compliant manner. I am Manan Gupta, and with me is Mark Baker. So today, we are going to be, this is a level 200 session, so we are going to cover some of the foundations of commercial Linux and running commercial Linux workloads on AWS and on EC2. We will start off by talking about the different types of commercial Linux products and subscriptions options that you have available, followed by a demo on AWS Systems Manager on how you can discover and govern your commercial Linux workloads. I'll talk about a couple of options or new ways in which you can cost optimize your Linux workloads. And finally, we'll touch on some of the security aspects with some of the end of support events coming up and how AWS can help you manage those transitions. So let's dive in. AWS supports a variety of operating systems. And on EC2, you have a choice of using a number of free distributions as well as paid commercial distributions. And you have the choice to use the most optimal operating system for your workloads. Our focus in today's session is going to be on the paid commercial Linux distributions. Now, I've talked a little bit about subscriptions, but what are subscriptions? Subscriptions effectively give you a compliant way to use the commercial Linux from the vendor. So it gives you access to the software, gives you access to upgrades, patches, support, as well as knowledge base for any common issues that you may face. And there are a couple of main ways in which you can use subscriptions on EC2. In a subscription included model, where you purchase the subscriptions from AWS, or in a BYOS model, where you purchase the subscriptions from the OS vendor and use them on AWS. Let me dive in a little bit into each of these. So as I mentioned, in case of BYOS, you purchase the subscriptions directly from the OS vendor, which means you have the billing and the support relationship with the OS vendor. Typically, these will be annual subscriptions that you're purchasing from them, and you will have access to Amazon machine images that you can then deploy on EC2. Once you have your workloads running on EC2, you get access to ongoing upgrades and patches through the vendor-provided AWS infrastructure or through your own management repos that you can deploy on AWS or on-premises. Now, this model is very useful for customers who are starting to migrate their workloads to AWS, or you may have already purchased subscriptions from the OS vendor and you want to apply them on EC2. It's also useful if you have a large footprint across on-premises and multiple cloud providers, and you want an easy single place to be able to manage and get your subscriptions. In case of a subscription included model, you purchase subscriptions from AWS. So as you deploy your instances either through the EC2 console or through AWS Marketplace, the OS subscriptions are included as part of your EC2 instances. Just like you manage your infrastructure and scale your infrastructure, you can do that for your OS subscriptions. Your billing and support relationship is with AWS, but we do have our direct line of contact with each of our OS partners in case of any escalations. This model is especially useful if you're a born-in-the-cloud customer or if you've migrated all of your workloads to AWS. It provides a lot of operational simplicity and scaling, as I mentioned, like along with your infrastructure. There are a number of subscription-included products that we support. So for each of these, we work with our OS partners to provide the latest and most secure images, and you get access to updates and patches through the update infrastructure. Now, if you are purchasing subscriptions from our OS partners, you have access to their subscription manager tools or the customer portal where you can log in and get to know about what subscriptions you have and how you're using them. But one of the areas where you've lacked visibility is what subscriptions you're purchasing from AWS. So I would now like to hand over to Mark, who's going to talk to you a little bit about AWS License Manager and show you a demo of how you can manage and track that using AWS.
Thank you, Manan. So I wanted to start by introducing you to AWS License Manager. License Manager is there really to help you, as the name implies, to help you manage licenses and subscriptions on Amazon EC2, but also on premises. It does that via integration with AWS Systems Manager, so to help you discover licenses and subscriptions on premises via Systems Manager agent. It's really designed to help you answer that question, right? That your licensing team or software asset management team may ask you, is how many licenses or subscriptions do we have running? And that may be for compliance reasons, it might be for cost optimization reasons. Whatever the reason is, you need to be able to provide an answer to that question. The automated discovery, as I said, that comes from, so automated discovery of, it could be like an Oracle license or a SQL Server license, or perhaps an SAP license, comes via integration with AWS Systems Manager. But we also have automated discovery of commercial Linux subscriptions. And that doesn't require Systems Manager. And that's because it works in a different way using EC2 metadata. So if you're not a fan of Systems Manager for whatever reason, not a problem, because License Manager still enables you to go and discover Linux subscriptions wherever you may be running them on EC2. These things combined give you better visibility and tracking. So License Manager is there to say, really to help you answer those questions. How many of these things are we running, right? Are we within the bounds of our contract? Are we within the bounds, perhaps, of our budgets? If we focus specifically on the Linux subscriptions element of License Manager, it's built around these four kind of core pillars. The first of those is discovery. Tell me what I have and where it's running. It's tracking usage. So which accounts are using these subscriptions? And what reasons are they being used? How are the patterns of usage changing over time? It's around governance, right? So it's putting guardrails in place to be able to get notifications and alarms if certain thresholds are exceeded or met, or indeed if you're running fewer instances than perhaps you think you should be running. And finally, it's about optimization. So many customers, you are telling us that cost optimization, reducing cost or optimizing use is super important. And so how you use the data that you get from License Manager to perform actions to optimize use. And that might be converting from one subscription type to another, or providing an add-on with an extended support option, for example. But that's enough, I think, about me talking about it. Let's show you, and I have to make sure I press the right button. There we go. Let's show you AWS License Manager. So I'm going to start, and I'm just going to have to log in. Start with my EC2 console, and hopefully this is all going to be very familiar to you. And I would like you to think about, if you are asked that question, how many commercial Linux subscriptions do we have running in EC2 today? Now, the way that you may go about trying to answer that question, if you're not using License Manager, would be to start to try and pull information from different sources. The first which would be EC2, right, in your EC2 console. So I've got a number of systems running here. Again, hopefully this is all very familiar for you. But if we go and look at the number of running instances, I've got a typical setup. Let's go and make that a little more logical, alphabetical. So you can see some app servers, some database servers, some web servers, and an SAP server. Right? So I don't know, it's sort of a sample line of business or work, use case application set. And again, if I was to say, okay, which of these are running a commercial Linux and have a subscription associated with them, we go and let's click on there and go and take a look at the instance data. Well, straight away, I get the standard information, what type of instance type it is. I can see which region I'm running in, of course, the IP information. And if I scroll down, I can see this is a Red Hat instance, right? And I see that from here, the platform. It says Red Hat inferred. The inferred means that actually it's coming from the ARMY or AMI name. We can see that this is from a RHEL 9.2 ARMY. So we're taking a pretty educated guess that this is running Red Hat, right? But does it have a subscription attached? Well, we can scroll down a little bit further, and we'll see platform details, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And a little bit further down, you'll see the usage operation, run instances 0010. This is metadata that's attached to the instance. And if we, and now I'm cheating in here that I have a link already set up, but if you go and click this information, in the documentation, you can go and look this up, right? So the AMI billing information fields and see what this means. So Red Hat Enterprise Linux, as the platform details, run instances 0010, tells us that it has an embedded Red Hat Enterprise Linux subscription, right? So there is a subscription attached to this instance. We know that because if it was just plain run instances, here that we see at the top with platform Linux, Unix, means that there is no subscription attached to that. It's effectively a freely available Linux. So that quickly giving me some information about that. You may have, for example, tags set up too, right? And if you have good instance and AMI hygiene, you'll be setting tags on your instances because that gives you a lot of information or can be very powerful. Here we can see obviously the name, but we have a tag set that's RHEL. We see the OS version is 9.2. Relatively easy for me here because I'm just running a bunch of instances. But again, if you're running this at scale, you might want to be looking at using the describe instances command, right? In EC2, I have this because typing in front of a live audience is super hard. I have it actually just set up as a script. So if we do this, if I get that right. So you can't even get that right. Describe instances. This is a command. If I just run that, it'll give me a quick breakdown of the instance that we're just looking at, that RHEL instance. And again, you can see I've got the platform details of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, run instances, the usage code, and those helpful tags, right? Remember that tags are set by the operators, right? They're set by you when you're launching the instance. And so whilst you hope that they can trust them, over time you may get drift and things that can impact that. So it's not necessarily definitive, but it's a good indicator. So that's super helpful here. As we if we go take a look at another one, for example, let's go and take a look at this SAP environment. We see that, okay, this is running as I scroll down. This is running, it's coming, okay, we can see that it's come from a SUSE AMI. It's running platform Linux, Unix. That means there's no subscription attached, right? Based on what I just said. But actually, it's a little more complex than that because we can see the AMI itself has come from Marketplace. Now, if we go and then, again, just cheating and do the quick load here, if I go and look in my Marketplace console, click here on Manage Subscriptions, and go and check out my SUSE Linux Enterprise for SAP, and see here and under Actions, and then View Instances, I can see, actually, I do have an instance of that running. This instance ID ends in 69, which is the same. It should be the same as this one. Yep, ends 69. Okay, so this has a Marketplace subscription attached. Now, the information is there, right? You can go and find this information out, but you are having to look in several different places. And so you told us that you need a better way, basically, of doing this. And that's where AWS License Manager comes in. So License Manager, we go and take a look in License Manager. We see that this is our dashboard. Straight away, we'll see that actually we have some granted license entitlements. These are the marketplace entitlements that we have. And again, we can go take a look at that SLES for SAP subscription that we have. So get some information about that. We've already seen that, so we'll not dive in too much further with that. But what else do we have? Some CentOS running there, maybe something that we want to take note of, right? Because there's some upcoming events that we'll want to do something about that. But as we scroll down a little further, importantly, you will see Linux subscriptions. So I'm going to go click here on subscriptions, and straight away, I get a list of the different subscription types that I have associated with my use. We take the top one, just 'cause it's nice and easy. By clicking on that, we get that single consolidated view, right, of the different RHEL subscriptions that we have, right, running. Provides us with the instance information, instance ID, and so obviously instance type, the account number. And notice here, straight away, we'll see we've got 2 different account numbers. Right? So I am discovering these RHEL instances across multiple accounts. You'll also see that it's a couple of different regions here too. So I'm discovering them across different regions. So this is cross-account, cross-region discovery. And that's really important because most of our customers, I'm sure you are the same too, have multiple accounts. You may have an AWS Organizations structure, for example. I hope you do if you're running multiple accounts. And so you don't just want to answer that question, how many for one account? I mean, you can answer that by using these very helpful filters. So you can say the account ID equals, for example, this top one, and we'll just get those if you just want to do reporting or get information on a per account basis. Right? But generally, you want to have that full cross-account, cross-region view. License Manager provides you that. And this is exactly the same for other different types. If we take Ubuntu Pro, for example, we see we've got a number of instances here running. It's providing us the same information in terms of instance ID, different accounts in different regions, with the helpful filters, again, to be able to get that. You'll also note we have this export view to CSV. And so, again, we've heard from customers like you that this is really useful in EC2, but you also have often your own systems for tracking license usage or subscription use. In fact, sometimes multiple tools to do that. And so to be able to take, if I export this to CSV, it's going to go ahead and create that CSV file. I'm not going to open it now because that'll launch Excel and I'll get lost. But it provides exactly the same information here that you're looking at as a CSV file, and then you can take that, import it into your own license management system or software asset management system or tracking system that you have. It provides a very handy way to do that. So this is really sort of talking to that discovery element. And you'll see, again, if I just switch back on the Linux subscriptions, you'll see here, it's not just those subscriptions are attached to EC2 instances from the launch wizard, from the console, it's also marketplace subscriptions. So in this instance, you see we don't have a usage code, usage operation, because this is a marketplace product, and so we do have a marketplace product code. So again, if you want to be able to filter those by product code, so you can be able to see, how many of these do we have running? I've only got one, so it's very easy. But if you had multiple instances, very simple to be able to discover those and track those. You also see here in Linux subscription instances, this is pretty much the same view, but from a different perspective. So if I'm interested in the subscription type, then I'll go and look at subscriptions. But if I actually wanted to be able to get a view on the instances that I'm running, and again, this is answering that question, how many RHEL do I have? How many Ubuntu Pros do I have? How many SUSE Linux Enterprise Servers do I have? Allows us, again, to be able to do that from just a different perspective, with exactly the same capabilities, being able to export it and filter as we need to. So this is really addressing that first pillar, discovery. It's also addressing tracking, right? To be able to see how we have those across different regions, how we have them across different accounts, and being able to export that view to be able to manage and track it in conjunction with other systems that we have them. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about governance. So one of the things that you, again, you've told us that you need is, well, this is all well and good, but we need to have some kind of guardrails in place. And a really good example of that may be, we take RHEL, right? This is RHEL, what we class as subscription included. So these are instances that has a Red Hat subscription attached to them directly, the first subscription type that Manan was discussing just a few slides ago. And it may be that this meets the needs of your workload. However, you know that actually this is in dev and test, right? And when we start to move some of those workloads from on-premises into AWS, we're going to free up some RHEL subscriptions that we have on-prem, and we may be that we want to use those on EC2, right? That makes perfect sense. So we want to say that actually, first thing, by clicking on here, usage metrics and alarms, we can see we're having these 3 instances of RHEL running, which is great, whilst we're in this dev test phase. As we start to migrate instances from on-prem, we want them to be using subscriptions, the Red Hat Cloud Access subscriptions that have transferred from on-prem. That's good, right? We can try and enforce that by telling dev teams and ops teams to do the right thing. But just in case they don't, we're going to set up a notification or alarm, right? And we'll say that, okay, for dev test, we think we need maybe a maximum of 10 instances. So I'm going to give it an alarm name. I'll say in this region, if the number of instances greater than or equal to 10, right? And it gives us this visual here to explain what's going on, which basically says if the number of instances with an embedded Red Hat subscription exceeds 10, then it's going to create an alarm. That alarm and notification is actually a CloudWatch alarm, so there's no sort of nothing new here if you're using CloudWatch, which again, I hope you are if you're running production workloads on EC2. You'll get an alarm saying, actually, you've now hit 10 instances. And you can use that information to determine, okay, so why are we running 10 instances? Are there, for example, cloud access subscriptions that we have sat effectively on the bench that we can bring to use here and make sure we've got best use of our instances and our subscriptions? So that's the first part of governance, and that's really, say, setting those thresholds and understanding, when you're approaching them, when you're hitting them, and being able to take action based on the notification, the alarm that you get. Another aspect to that, though, is really around delegated administration. And so here I'm jumped into settings for our License Manager Linux subscriptions. Settings here tells us that, first of all, when you come in, and in fact, just let me do that. I'm just going to switch screen here very quickly and go into a different account. So we'll go into this one. When you first activate Linux subscriptions, or when you first launch it, you're going to get a slightly different experience. And I'm going to just quickly go and do that. This will be what we class as the first use experience. And I'll go into settings here and see that, Amazon Q, new service, great. In Linux subscriptions, I want to go and configure this, right? It's my first time using it. I need to go and configure. I'll go and, in fact, let me do it. I'll do it in a different region because then we'll get a slightly different experience just for example's sake. Let's go and do it in Sydney. Boom. Go ahead, and you need to configure that and specify a source region or whatever it is. So this is where we are going to go and discover instances in. Very easy for me to be able to select all regions and do that, and add those. I'm not going to do that in this case, but I could go and select the regions that I want to perform discovery in, and click Save. And what that does is creating an IAM role. It's creating an access permission such that this license manager can go and look in that region, discover the instances, right? You'll see that, no, I'll come back to that. So as so this is the admin account that I was just in. What I want to do, I've already configured this, right? So you can see that we're discovering across the USEs 2. We see that we have AWS Organizations linked here. I'll come back to that in a second. In fact, no, let's talk about it now. Organizations means that it's scanning not just the region that we've selected here, but it's also scanning all the other linked accounts that we have. And if you quickly take a look, let's go and have a look at organizations. You see in my little setup here, we've got the demo account that I'm using, which is the one that I'm in right now, and then we've got a couple of linked accounts, right? And you see the account numbers here, 0851 and 7617, right? So this is our organization. By looking in License Manager and the settings, excuse me, having to flip back very quickly, you'll see that we have, by clicking Edit, we selected the regions that we want to discover for this particular account, but we've also linked organizations. And the warning here, it says, if you link to AWS Organizations, License Manager creates a service link role, right? So it's basically saying License Manager can scan all of the accounts in the regions that you've selected. It's worth being aware of that from a security perspective, but if you want the cross-region, cross-account discovery, that's how you do it. Now again, you'll know that best practice is not to use the admin account for everything. And so a License Manager supports delegated administration. Delegated administration means that you can delegate the permissions to a third party in your organization, a different account in your organization. And again, we see customers like you do this because you have a particular person or team that is tasked with managing software assets or licenses. And you want them to have access to this capability, but restricts access to other areas. And so in this case, what I want to do is that account that I was just looking at, let's do this one. You'll see that it ends 0851. This I want to set up as a delegated administrator. So the thing I'm going to do, just very quickly, is copy that account ID, because it makes my life far simpler to do that. And then switch here and to register them as a delegated administrator. You'll see in this account, in Linux subscriptions, I don't have the ability, when I'm clicking Edit, right, even though it says AWS Organizations is not linked, if I click there, I don't have the ability to change that, right? And that's because I don't have administration access for License Manager. So I'm going to go ahead and grant that to the account ID. I have to basically click the checkbox that says, I'm granting permissions to do that. I'll go ahead and register. Success. So now if I flip back to the admin account that I was just in, and I'll have to quickly reload and click Edit, I should now have the ability, yes, to link AWS Organizations. So that tells me that I have full License Manager admin capability. And this really gives you, again, it's part of governance, gives you the ability to delegate authority, responsibility for license management, subscription management to somebody or an account that needs it. So we've dealt with discovery, having that single pane of glass, having that single console for you to be able to find your Linux subscriptions, track them. We've dealt with governance, right? How you can set those notifications and alarms based on thresholds that you've set. And then also how you can use delegated administration to provide access to that role for people that need it, or the accounts that need it. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about optimization. And for this, we're going to go back into EC2. And let's take a look at some of the instances that we had running here. So I see that I need to make sure I'm in the right account. Yes, so if I go back into EC2 and take a look here, you'll see that of my 11 instances running, you can see, well, there's quite a few different ones. I need to make sure, right? I want to make sure that all of these instances are getting updates. They're going to be compliant. And so of these, tell you what, I'll go and have a look in AWS Systems Manager. Right? Systems Manager is going to tell me, if I go into Fleet Manager, Tells me I have a number of these running, right? I've got a number of Ubuntu instances. That's important, right? Because I know that Ubuntu 18.04 has recently gone end of life. So I want to make sure that I don't have any instances running that are going to perhaps have potential security issues. So let's go and pick one of these. Let's have a look at Web Server 3. I can see, actually, this is running 18.04, right? Systems Manager is giving me this information. And so that immediately sets alarm bells ringing. What do I need to do about that? I can then, in fact, if I quickly go and look in Amazon Inspector, again, hopefully use Inspector to give you alerts on vulnerabilities, go and have a look by instance type. For example, I can see actually I've got a couple of instances here running, and one has a high number of vulnerabilities. This tells me this is definitely something I need to take action based on this, right? I need to do something about that. So, well, there's a number of options, right? 18.04, Ubuntu 18.04 is end of life. I could upgrade it, right? I could upgrade it to Ubuntu 20.04. But I don't really want to do that, right? This is a mission-critical service for me, and it's much more effective for me to upgrade it in place, to be able to update it such that I can get those patches and fixes that I need, but without having to migrate any workloads or upgrade the operating system, because then I'm going to have to go through that whole process of retesting and certification. So the way in which I go about doing that is using AWS License Manager. I'm going to use AWS License Manager to upgrade Ubuntu 18.04, which is end of life, to convert it to Ubuntu 18.04 Pro, or Ubuntu Pro 18.04. Ubuntu Pro, right, gives that extended life cycle, so it gives me updates, and it gives me much greater coverage of vulnerabilities and packages that are going to be updated. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll do that using license type conversion. License type conversion, and we start off reading across the top how to convert a license type for EC2 instances. I need to start by saying complete the prerequisites, right? It must be configured in AWS Systems Manager. Well, we know that it is because I just showed that. Then I need to stop the instance. So as we quickly switch into EC2, we'll go ahead and find that instance and stop it. See the running instances here, and it was Web Server 3, wasn't it? I'll go down and stop the instance. Get the usual alerts and warnings. Just while that's stopping, just to explain what we're doing here. We want to convert this Ubuntu 18.04 instance, because it's end of life and has, 200 plus vulnerabilities in it. It's a big security issue. We're going to convert that to Ubuntu Pro. Right? Ubuntu Pro is going to give me the updates and the extended lifecycle and support that I need. So I'm not having to upgrade it to a later version of Ubuntu. I'm just adding effectively a commercial Linux subscription to it to extend the lifecycle. That has now stopped, so we'll go back into AWS License Manager on the license type conversion, and we're now on step 3, create license type conversion. So you'll see here that we've already done this a few times whilst I've been practicing. One of the things that you'll see there's a couple failed there. That's because you must make sure the instance is stopped before you perform the conversion, otherwise it fails. And so it's a sort of top tip there to go ahead and do that. So we'll go ahead and create the license type conversion. We select the source operating system. So in this case, it's going to be Ubuntu LTS. It detects that we have Web Server 3 is stopped, and that's available for us to convert. We'll go ahead and check that box, and then check next. It gives us a warning, right? So license type destination, there's only one option. We convert that to Ubuntu Pro. And it tells us it's going to be adding a run instance code, right? A new usage operation onto that instance. And it warns us, this is a paid subscription. Previously, we weren't incurring a charge for Ubuntu. Now we are with Ubuntu Pro, but we're getting the value and the benefit of an attached subscription with the security updates and a greater coverage for that. So we go ahead and click Next and begin the conversion process. Now, this takes anywhere between a minute to 6 minutes, right? So we'll perhaps come back and see how that goes. But in the interest of time, we're going to switch back into License Manager. And the one thing actually I wanted to quickly show you, which I didn't, was a part of discovery, was that all of the, in fact, make the point in general, all of the capabilities you see here in the console, whether it's listing those subscriptions, in this case, or listing the instances, are all available via API. So I've been working with some customers, just like you, recently, and they say, the console is great, right? But we have tens, hundreds, thousands of instances. And so just getting that information on a single screen can be difficult, right? It's not going to work for us. Where if we want to perform conversion, right, we won't just be doing it on one instance at a time. We have to be able to be doing it in bulk. And so exactly the same way, let me just quickly do this. I have this little tool here. This is just, again, using the API. If I get that, it's called list subs. It's just using License Manager to list the subscriptions that we have. So we just show you that. This is talking to the EC2 API. It's talking to the License Manager. It pulls up the list of subscriptions that we have associated that running in License Manager. And this allows us to perform operations in a much more automated, scalable way. That includes conversion too. So if you want to be able to convert large amounts of instances at the same time, you can do that. So I'm now going to hand you back to Manan. Manan's going to talk to you specifically about some upcoming activities that you'll definitely want to pay attention to regarding both cost optimization and security. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for the demo. So I want to touch upon a couple of additional points around cost optimization in addition to all of the strategies that you may already have in place, more specifically for commercial Linux subscriptions. Definitely, what Mark just covered, I recommend onboarding onto Linux subscriptions. It will help you understand all of the Linux subscriptions that you're purchasing from AWS across all accounts, across all regions, and use that as a starting point to understand your spend, and then it will give you the ability to optimize thereafter. Earlier this year, we launched Ubuntu Pro on EC2, and we've seen many of you use Ubuntu Pro, especially with the Ubuntu 18 end of support earlier this year. Now, Ubuntu Pro also offers a lot of other benefits, including live kernel patching, as well as access to over 20,000 packages available in the Ubuntu Universe repository. And that effectively gives you your entire application stack security coverage. So as more of you are using Ubuntu Pro over extended periods of time, you should also consider using savings plans for Ubuntu Pro. Now, these savings plans will give you in the range of 20 to 30% savings for your infrastructure and operating system running on AWS. Now, security is paramount, and as part of that, we have a few OS lifecycle events. We've just talked about Ubuntu LTS, and then we have a few more coming up next year, so I want to touch upon a few of these. In addition to Ubuntu LTS 18, Ubuntu LTS 14, if you're running any Ubuntu LTS 14 instances, so you can use Systems Manager to identify any 14 or 18 instances that you have, and you would want to take action on any of those, and either upgrade them to a later version of Ubuntu Pro or to a current supported version of Ubuntu LTS. The other significant event coming up, so if you're running any RHEL 7 workloads, it will reach end of maintenance on June 30th, 2024. The recommended path from Red Hat is to move your RHEL 7 workloads to RHEL 8 or RHEL 9, which will be a more supported and up-to-date OS version. However, we understand that many of you may need additional time to move to RHEL 8 or RHEL 9. And for those of you, Red Hat does provide an add-on subscription called ELS, Extended Lifecycle Support. Now, RHEL ELS will provide you updates and bug fixes, as well as any critical patches as defined under Red Hat's ELS policy. To be able to get ELS, you need to be on the latest version of RHEL 7, which is RHEL 7.9. And RHEL 7 ELS will provide you 4 more years of coverage up to June 30th, 2028. Now, we are working closely with Red Hat to get you more details, details around pricing, availability on AWS Marketplace, as well as the purchase experience. We'll have more details early next year. Finally, CentOS 7 end of life, tied to the RHEL 7 end of support. On June 30th, 2024, you will have end of life for CentOS 7. Now, what does that mean for you? So CentOS, as you know, is a downstream distribution of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And now you have CentOS Stream, which will be upstream of RHEL. And so most of you and almost all of you are looking for alternate operating systems to move your CentOS workloads to. And as part of that decision, there are several factors that you have to keep in mind. So the security, stability of the operating system, cost, your developer expertise within your organization, your long-term OS strategy, all of these factors will weigh into that decision. A natural choice for many of you has been to move from CentOS to RHEL. And Red Hat provides, and we've worked with Red Hat to build this listing on AWS, so it's RHEL for third-party Linux migration. Now, this includes an easy migration path using Convert to RHEL tooling for your CentOS workloads to move to RHEL. And if you're using CentOS 7, it also includes ELS so that you can continue running those RHEL workloads. However, many of you are looking for alternate free options. CentOS was free, and you're looking for free options to run your CentOS workloads. And we are providing on AWS options for Rocky Linux, Alma Linux, Oracle Linux, which also offer a relatively easy path to migrate your CentOS workloads to those distributions. Many of you are also choosing to move your workloads to Amazon Linux and to the many other distributions that we talked about at the beginning of the session that are available on AWS. So to wrap up, the key takeaways from today's session, there are multiple ways to use commercial Linux subscriptions on AWS. So we've got BYOS and subscription included and several products that we support as part of that. It's important to be aware of these various ways in which your application developers might be using instances on EC2. You can use AWS Systems Manager Linux subscriptions feature to discover and track all of your commercial Linux subscriptions, cross-account, cross-region, and without needing to use any agents like SSM. You can also use AWS License Manager to perform in-place upgrades and do conversion tasks. So for example, if you want to move from Ubuntu to Ubuntu Pro, and that can be done in a seamless and in-place manner. And finally, if you're running any CentOS 7 or RHEL 7 workloads, you need to have a plan in place to be able to migrate. So in case of CentOS 7, migrate to another operating system, and in case of RHEL 7, either move to RHEL 8 or RHEL 9, or plan to get ELS, and we'll share more details on that in Q1. So as next steps, here's this QR code will take you to the AWS License Manager Linux subscriptions documentation. You can also just search for License Manager Linux subscriptions, and you'll find that in one of the top results. And there we've got the details of how you can onboard onto Linux subscriptions. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for joining us, and hope you have a great rest of reInvent. Thank you.